As we go into the 2024 NFL offseason, like the true meat of the offseason, I guess you could say, because Carolina Panthers minicamp just wrapped up. They're not back together as a team until training camp in, 6 weeks? Roughly, end of July. First game, by the way, preseason game, Thursday, August 8th, taking on the New England Patriots. Head up on the road for that one. So training camp's going to start, 2 weeks before that? 2 weeks and a couple days, 16 days roughly, whatever it is. Which will be in Charlotte that week, 2 weeks before that preseason game. We'll be in Charlotte for the ACC Football Media Days. We'll probably swing on through training camp as well, Victoria.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty
exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, Dennis Cox sitting in for Adam Gold today. Victoria producing the show as always. But this offseason, from what we've heard from Bryce Young, from recently Andy Dalton, from Deontay Johnson, so many others about the new head coach Dave Canales and what he's bringing offensively, couple of things that we have heard. Ownership, letting players take ownership of what they're asked to do. They have an understanding of why they're doing the things they're doing. They're, okay, we're installing these concepts, not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Hey, when we're doing this, this is why we're doing it, because eventually we do this. This will allow us to eventually get to this point, then to this point. So the why of what they're doing, with everything that they do in terms of scheme, individual techniques, for each position and so on and so forth. And this is where I think players for the Carolina Panthers, just talking strictly on offense, this is such a vital year for them to take the step that we want them to take and that they need to take based off what we saw last year. Last year was a disaster. We all know it. But as Bryce Young says here, now with this new offense, this new scheme, players are allowed to take ownership.
With the new system, everyone has this. Everyone in the room, you could tell there's a big buy-in on making sure that we take ownership in it. Just the professionalism that they display day in and day out. And again, also communication. Same thing, whether it's on the field and meetings, after practice in the locker room. Hey, on this play, whatever it is, how do we feel about this? Whatever, just that constant. Obviously, we're gonna run the plays that we're called. We're gonna pay attention in installs, but once we get that kind of base level, we want to make it our own. We want to make sure we're on the same page, and we appreciate the coaches for wanting that for us, making sure we take ownership. So I think it's just that stress to make sure that we make it our own and we take ownership of everything we're doing. That's been pushing us to grow.
I love hearing that. Hey, chance to take ownership. There's a lot of communication. From what we've seen, Victoria, what we've heard, there's a clear plan in place this offseason.
And I love that. That's what they need.
You should.
Yes.
You should. And we'll dive more into this here in a little bit, but it seems like from players, what we talked about is that it's very refreshing knowing that there is a plan. Like, hey, this is what we're doing this offseason. This is our progression. This is where we want to get to, as opposed to, hey, here's the playbook. All right, we're going to run these things today.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things like, what do they call those boards that you make? The dream boards. They always tell you to map out your goals.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That way you can hold yourself accountable.
Vision boards.
Yes, vision boards. That's it.
Yes, they're Dave Canales' vision board.
Right, Dave has a vision board.
Oh, he does. His vision board is a vision board.
Yeah.
That's part of it. It's another vision board. It's just built in. So when you look at Bryce Young, I'm gonna look at Bryce Young specifically right here. The way the offense, roster-wise, has been reconstructed. You brought in two new offensive guards in Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. My apologies on that. Blended the two together. But Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, you brought in two starting offensive linemen. For the interior offensive line, that looked like turnstiles at a metro station last year, is what they looked like. Everyone just coming through. Revolving door. Tons of injuries and all that too. They got him a true number one wideout in Deontay Johnson. They drafted Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette dealing with that little hamstring thing, being super cautious of it. That's totally fine. They drafted a running back in Jonathan Brooks in the second round. They drafted another tight end in Jatavian Sanders. There's so much that's being built up around him. This almost is like a second rookie season, I guess you could say, for Bryce Young. But there's so much that he's learned. And last year, again, as I said, was a complete and total disaster as a team as a whole. Complete and total disaster. From Reich had play calling, handed over to Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator. Then Reich takes it back over because he realized that, you know what, this plane's in a nosedive. I'm going down with the ship. At least I'm going to be holding the stick. Pilot this thing. I'm going to be the one holding it. He gets fired, so it goes back to Thomas Brown. The offense was, we saw in the preseason, we were told, hey, we're keeping everything super vanilla right now because we don't want anyone to see anything. Everyone's like, all right, cool. And then the regular season rolls around like, no, it's the same stuff. It's the exact same thing. So really what was different? Nothing changed. It was bad all from the get-go. But for Bryce Young, I think it is imperative for him. So much was spent on him to be a first overall pick. And it's not his fault. Not his fault the Carolina Panthers traded away everything they did to get to number one.
No.
Not his fault. That's not him.
Did. Yeah.
But they did. You were brought in to be the guy. This year, I think he doesn't have to, he needs to take steps to show that, hey, you know what? I was worthy of being that number one overall pick, and I can be the guy for this team moving forward. By the way, if you go on the flagship station for the Adam Gold Show, 99.9 The Fan, Victoria posts clips from the Adam Gold Show. You can actually watch the show there. If you're not able to listen to your radio, you can be anywhere and watch the stream live on YouTube. Myself and Chris Lee from WREL Sports, we also host a podcast called Panthers Playbook. Those videos are up there as well on YouTube. And we look through the comment section all the time. What people say, what fans are thinking, that we can kind of get a pulse of what fans are thinking. And Victoria, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen this as well. Bryce Young is polarizing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's extremely polarizing, there's some people think like, hey, you know what? I don't think this guy's good enough, or he hasn't shown me anything in that first year. But people would leave out the context of everything around it was a disaster.
Yeah, it was just him by himself.
Granted, he also didn't play well himself either.
Sure.
I'm not absolving him from any blame.
Sure, but he had him and Adam Thielen.
That was it.
Yeah.
And Chuba Hubbard to an extent.
Right.
Later on in the season. But nonetheless, it seems like, we'll probably need to dive into this a little bit later on, that there's a group of people out there, fan base. I don't know if it's a small majority, but they're the loud majority, or like a small minority of people, but the loud majority in terms of comments, that almost feel like they want Bryce Young to fail.
Yeah.
Which is really odd to me. If you think, hey, you know what? I don't think he's the guy. I didn't think he was the guy. He's undersized, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. If you don't think he's the guy, okay, then you don't think he's the guy. But I've seen in comments and people say, and even tweet at me saying like, oh, that guy stinks. I hope he gets benched. They need to cut him, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, do you not want him to be successful?
Well, and these are also the same fans that probably will say, let's go, keep pounding when they do well.
There's also that too. But it's amazing how polarizing he is after one season when everything around him was a disaster.
Yeah, you have to look at the whole picture.
You have to look at the whole picture. And I think this is something that we lose a lot in sports world. I mean, obviously, people that sit and talk into microphones like I do lose that context too when they're talking about these things. And they don't really provide all that when discussing players and teams and such. But with Bryce, again, everything around it was a disaster. But I still think so much of this year is important for him to show that, yeah, I can be the guy for this team. I can play in this league. I can be a franchise player. Like, he has to take a massive leap this year because what we all hear with Canales and the offensive putting in, run first, play action. They got you the different personnel that's built around you. Let's see progress this year.
Please.
Like in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way, like progress.
That's all I want. As a Panther fan, that's all I want is progression.
And isn't that what you want? Like, again, the people that I see that basically want Bryce Young to fail confuse me because that tells me if you want Bryce to fail, that means you want your team to lose.
Right, you're not supporting the team.
I'm like, so do you want them to win?
Are these all like Falcons, Bucks, and Saint fans?
They might be undercover. They might be undercover.
Well, and I can also see, too, because I'm in that category where, no, I did not want us to go for a quarterback like we did. So, yeah, I didn't like their decision with that. I wanted us to make more solid O-line and, fix those gaps first. However, we did what we did. We have Bryce. Now I want to see this year. I'm a little apprehensive. I'm optimistic, but this year I just want to see progression.
That's it.
And with Dave's plans, I'm glad he's got a vision board. I just want it to come true.
Honestly, you know what I think what it is? I think I'm this is what I'm realizing. Is that Bryce Young is a reflection of David Tepper, because we all know that David Tepper influenced that pick, right? To trade up to go, all right, we're taking that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a reflection of Tepper. Who's the one person that 99.9% of Panthers fans despise?
That would be Mr. David Tepper.
David Tepper, Mr. Tepper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So guess what? Bryce Young's a reflection of that and the choices that he made. So you know what? People are pissed off at David Tepper, and guess who takes the brunt of that? Because who's the face of the decisions that he made? It's Bryce Young. So it's almost like, you know what? I want Bryce to fail because I want Tepper to fail because I hate David Tepper. I think that might be what it is, Victoria.
It could be. I'm sure it is.
It's an underlying subconscious feeling.
Yeah, I know, and I am right there with you because he's done nothing but bring this franchise down since he got it.
Yeah, I know.
So, and that's why it's very frustrating as a Panthers fan when you can see year after year what they need to do. And I felt really good when Steve Wilkes was the head coach, interim head coach the last half of the year. I felt good about it. I felt like we were going in the right direction, and then here he goes making a roster switch again, and it's just so it's just frustrating, and I'm sure that's frustration. But you got to be. You don't have to be like Dave Canales where you're overly optimistic. I get it. Some people are just not built that way, but don't hate on your own team. Like, we want to be successful.